Hello and welcome. This is going to be a very short lecture on how to block USB drives, but you wanted to allow a specific USBs, meaning you might have a company-owned USB stick that you wanted to allow for everybody so that they can read, write, they could print. They wanted to block or you're not going to allow anything other than that specific USB. So you might have a company owned USB sticks, right? So that you wanted to control. So for that, it's easy to create a policy. This is quite new, but if you are trying to achieve with Microsoft Intune as a standalone, it might not work for you. The reason being, it needs additional licenses also. Of course, people will create um, from configuration profile just like this. These settings, if you try to apply, if you just Google anywhere, or if you try to check the documentation, they always refer to use these things, but it might not work most of the cases. So you have to actually use a different method. Yeah, that's nothing but your Defender. So you need to have the Defender license. So if you just go back to security.microsoft.com and go back to your settings, if you have already configured your Microsoft Intune connector, these all things can be possible when you have a license. So if you have a license or not, you can simply check out from this specific tab. This will list here what kind of license you have. Once you are clear with the licensing point, then you would go back to enabling the advanced feature called Microsoft Intune connector. So once you enable this, actually in the security, if you just go back to Microsoft Intune, this is the security, endpoint security. This is where you have, if you just scroll down completely, you have an option called a setup for Defender for endpoint. So you just have to enable the connector, then the synchronization would appear here. So if you're not able to see these things, that means it's not actually enabled. You have to enable these things. And then you also have to configure your security policies to assign a policy which is not only making you to onboard a Defender for your endpoint, it also makes additional configuration. So these are, of course, if you're quite new for Microsoft Defender for Cloud, it might be a little hard for you, but these are the things you have to configure. Once you have all of these things, you have to go back to the endpoint security. And now the actual steps comes here. And the ADR, this is where you have the attack surface reduction, or you call it as ASR. Okay. So within this ASR, you have to create a couple of things. There's something called a reusable things, meaning, let's say you wanted to whitelist a specific USB stick, right? So that might have a specific serial number or hardware ID, all of that, right? So you have to use either device manager or a software called HWinfo64. If you just search with this name, you would get it with this software. If you just try to install on one of your test machine, and you could easily extract all the required hardware IDs. Otherwise, you can simply go to device manager, just like me here, and then navigate to your. Now you have to connect your USB stick on one of the test machine and open up this device manager. Select the USB stick that is showing under disk drives, or you could even simply go back to your this PC and then whatever the drive it was showing, go to the properties of that. It will list here hardware. So this is also here showing as a ScanDisk Ultra in this case. So you simply have to either choose this option, or here there's one and the same. So I would use your device manager and go back to details. So this is where you have to copy couple of information like hardware IDs, right? This information you have to copy to your notepad, and also class GUID. This is the important one. Definitely this is the one. And also if you have the serial number here, you can, copy that information also. So just in case if it is not listed the serial number, you could use the HWInfo64 to get the serial number and additional complete details information. So once we have these information, so what I've done is I just copy like this in my notepad, including the device instance path, all of these information, and then I would jump back to this policy within this reusable. I'll just click on add and give a basic details here. For example, a test policy, whatever the USB you want to know. Hello, for example, this is scan disk. Okay, hello policy. And this is where you have to add a removable storage. With this policy, you could also even configure your printer devices. So we are targeting for removable storage. And simply configure settings. So before you click on configure, try to understand here the match type is match any. Any means any of these settings here are only all of these settings that we are going to configure here. So you can choose any of these. In my case, I would like to use that. And then this is where the serial ID, bus ID, or device ID, PID, VID, vendor PID, hardware ID, instance path. This is the name. You can give any name. Okay, primary ID, friendly name. These are the information that you have to give it. So if you have simple any kind of doubt, you can always click on this or look at this kind of simple sample data. So for example, if you don't know device path, so this is how it looks like. So if you just go to this website, it would be lengthy and you might or might not get it. Um, but it also talks about the same thing, but these are all advanced topics, I would say. This you could pull up from log analytics. Otherwise, uh, if you just take out the required information, this is what you have to get it from your device manager. So in my case, what I've done is I've already created this reusable policy. So you see here, simply I enter my serial number of that specific disk and device ID, which we copied from a notepad, and hardware ID. So you might have a question, hardware ID. If you remember, or if you clearly notice, hardware IDs are a lengthy one, right? So you might have a more than one. So what I've done is I've just copied all of these just like these, copy, and then I pasted here. It would accept. So more than one line, it will accept. You don't need to worry about it. Okay, and then this is giving as a name as a disk drives because these are the category under disk drives. That's all. So what I've done, I've selected serial ID, device ID, and hardware ID. Remember, my friends, this is very important. Uh, you need to at least give any of these three things. Okay, it will match any of these. Then you could say you want to block it or you want to allow them. Later point you could configure. So in my case, here it is showing as a match any of these values which are there. For example, a serial number or device ID or hardware ID, or these are the three categories, right? So once I have these things, I'll go back to my ASR policy, and here I'll start creating a new policy for Windows 10 or 11 with ASR specific to device control. So in this case, if you choose these things, you should be able to block it. So we have done this in the past also, if you remember, in one of my video, we have done to block everything. So what I have done is in that time, simply I have created here, for example, so simply block all USBs. And then what we have done is we actually use the device control to select as deny, and we have selected all of these things, right? So it would automatically block everything. So here, block, and then if you have a SID of that user account or computer SID, you could give it so that it gets applied. If you do not give any of the SIDs, it's going to apply for entire group. So the group we would be configuring in the assignment of this policy, right? So you could configure here Dene with all these settings, right? So in my case, what I've done is in the past I have already created this kind of policy, but this time I'm going to enhance the policy with more specific to allow a specific USB and block everything, right? This is a next level of next version of that, right? So for that we know now what to be done. So let's go back to the policy which I have created. I'll show you. ASR. This is a policy that we have created and which is working fine. So let me edit the configuration for you and show you. So I've done a lot here, but it's optional until Bluetooth. These are optional settings for this requirement. Why I'm saying is, you see here in the administrative templates, what I've done, I've applied the layered evolution, meaning if this policy is going to prevent um, or it was matched somewhere, some of the settings from here, would you want to do it? Okay, that's what it says. Layer order of evolution for allow or prevent device installation policies across all the matched criteria. So I wanted to enable, right? So now if you see here, allow installation of the devices that matches of any of these device ID. So if you remember, we were talking about the device IDs, right? So the device ID can be, get it from here. For example, imaging device, right? So if I have some kind of, printer example or scanner, this is a scanner, right? So I can simply choose here my GUID and this ID information I have to give it. It means I'm gonna only approve only these devices that can be connected. For example, you bring other than scanner, some other device, it won't work. So it would be challenging in order to create this policy, right? So that's why what Microsoft suggests is, hey, if you are looking to create such kind of policy explicitly, only these devices are needs to be allowed. So more cornering end users device with more secure, no other devices can be plugged in, just like defense kind of thing. Then there are two options for you. Okay, one is a general Microsoft uh, option. So I would put it in this way. So this is Microsoft option. Okay, the first one is the class. So this is the first one. Okay, second option is class GUID. So any of these can be added in your policy. So I'll repeat an easy way to understand. Hey, if you want to allow in a generally all kind of things, but you want to exclude some specific things, then you have an option here to configure based on class specific or class GUID. So if it is a class GUID, you know that it will be just like this bigger one. If it is a class is a battery. So let's say if you have a battery for maybe Lenovo specific, a class, or maybe HP specific, it doesn't matter, but it was defined as class, right? The GUID differs, right? If you are talking about the model specific, but I'm talking in this case with respect to only a general GUID. So this is a general GUID for battery devices. Similarly, for a battery classes, this is a general name and it is approved. So if you just give either this method, that is the first method, class, or GUID. So GUIDs are here not specific. I'm talking about a general class GUID, right? So there are two options for everything. So if you just scroll down, you have a Bluetooth, biometric, camera, whatnot. Every specific class is available. So in other way, my friends, if you just look at the specific one here, these all are the classes, right? So every class will have its own GUID, right? So for example, keyboard. So somewhere here, yeah, here you have a keyboard, right? So for this, a general class GUID is available. So that means anybody can connect a different USB based keyboard or maybe a serial port keyboard can be connected. It works if you add it. So that's what I've done. So what I've done is I've added here all the geo IDs, device IDs, and later point even I should be even able to add uh, class specific also. You see here, class specific like a battery, keyboard, all of these also I've added by selecting this allow installation of devices that are using drivers that matches to the specific class. For example, battery, biometric, Bluetooth, all of this can be added. Okay, so now you know what classes. Now here, uh, other one. So this policy is specific to allowing devices that's going to match with the specific device IDs, right? Now here, installing the device that matches any of these means it also installs in the backend, right? Some kind of driver, whatever it. So the same things, what I've done is instead of giving here one by one, for example, this is the one, right? So what I can do is I can simply copy, comma, and paste it here. It works, okay, like that. So what I've done is here in this case, I've added many of them at once. So there's a limitation of 2048 key value. So that's why I've split it into 4 values. If I give all of them in one, it was not taken because of a huge length. Okay, you see here, this is a huge length, right? So what I've done is I've splitted them, the above all of given by collecting all this information and then added here. So this is a very common till here, right? That's why I said, in the beginning of, earlier, till from administrative template to Bluetooth, these are the optional and more control with specific to a specific set of configuration. But now we are talking about only USB specific. So let's drive into device control with a USB specific. So here what I've done is two things. You might have to know little focus. Um, so if you look at here, I created two type of policies. The first one is denying. This is allowing. Okay. Understand the first one is deny. Second one is allow. Okay. Now there's something called include and exclude. So in one policy, I have included. For example, here I have included. Here there's no value. I have not included. So here, wherever I have not included, there I have excluded. For example, this is where I excluded. This is where I have not done any exclusion, right? Because I have included here. So let's understand what is that include and exclude. This is a tricky thing that I've done. So deny all USB, exclude. What is that is exclude the reusable thing which we have created in the previous step. So what we have done in the previous step, we have uh, used that hardware ID, serial ID, and the class GUIDs, all of that, whatever we have collected, that information was showing here. So simply I've added here as a reusable. Okay, reusable. Remember, my friends, this is in preview mode at this point of time, meaning you might not get, if you go to Microsoft, a proper support. But this is tested, it's gonna work for you, right? So I've included here exclude, right? So this is exclude for this option. Okay, that means the company owned USB stick is excluded for an action called edit entry. Now you'll understand denying. So company owned USB stick is not getting denied because here, even though it is denying, we are excluding for our company USB stick. So this USB stick, whatever you're going to plug in, is excluded, meaning all other policies, all other USB sticks gets disabled with the first setting, meaning they cannot access, right? So now the second thing. So I hope this is clear. So the here the policy is basically for deny everything except our company one is allowed, right? So, that is excluded, but every other device is getting denied here. So if you look at masks, so I have configured everything, including the printer, all of that. So in your case, if you don't need anything to, printer related, you could, remove the specific setting. Okay. So after that, now I'm talking about the other policy. This is a tricky one, as I said. So here I've only included for my company owned USB stick. So in this case, my company owned USB stick, when it is connected, this policy gets applied, right? Because this is what include. So here in this policy, I hope you already know it. The answer is simple, I've allowed. And the action specific, if select all of these, it won't work. Okay, so you have to explicitly say that read, write, execute. So in my case, read, write, execute is allowed, meaning I should be able to even create a file also, even edit that, all of that. And you could target a more specific also is a next funnel. So the first funnel is a different, this is the second level of funnel, that also you could do it. So in our case we have done all of this, and just save this policy and assign to the required group. So in my case I have assigned for the a group which consists of devices. Okay, and when I tested, this policy is working without any problem. Okay, so you connect a specific device with that specific serial ID and the class ID, GUID, then it is able to read write in that USB. But because that's a company approved USB stick, but whereas other USB sticks, if I connect, it's not going to work. So you might have to even explore some additional features, like people will come up and say that, hey, I wanted to connect my USB stick, uh, not the USB stick, let's say phone, iPhone or whatever the Samsung phone, and there shouldn't be no copy paste inside, but we are allowing to recharge them. In that case, you have an options here, additional options which are optional, as I said earlier. So for example, these are the things you have to use these additional configuration, go through it, and that would definitely help you. So I know that this entire lecture itself lengthy one, close to 25 minutes now. So I wanted to conclude here. Yes, you could achieve more in-depth, more custom specific configuration for blocking USB sticks, including you just wanted to allow them as a read only is possible, or you want to edit, or they cannot print. So these things can be completely applied with the help of Microsoft Intune and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So to manage the Microsoft Endpoint Defender for Endpoint antivirus, you need to integrate Microsoft Intune in order to manage easily. I hope the entire lecture is useful for you. Thank you for watching this. I'll catch you in the next lecture.